the Truth, Money, and Freedom podcast.
Good morning. Welcome back to another edition of Truth, Money, and Freedom. Today is Monday, June 1st, 2020. Where has the year gone? Hey gang, lots of little updates here. First of all, I want to thank all of you who joined us for the live stream with Aaron Scott we did last night, or yesterday afternoon actually. We had a really good time with Aaron, covered a lot of bases, and it was just our honor to have Aaron on with us. So check that out. That should be available. That's a YouTube thing. That should be available on the feed for a replay, hopefully within a few hours. But I wanted to, I've been remiss in this. I was on with the Talk Junkies on the 17th of May. So we're going back 2 weeks ago. And I really need to let you guys know there was a great discussion we had. I'm not a big fan of the interview format. It was more of a discussion. And it wasn't just the Talk Junkies. It was myself and Brandon, also known as Conjecture. And we had a very constructive argument, actually putting together a case for why the Federal Reserve is actually evil, not just as an entity, but by actions. And if you guys want to check that out, that'll be the first link down below in the description section. You guys can see this discussion we had from 2 weeks ago. Please go check it out. It's a great channel. They do a lot of interesting stuff there. And they do the same thing that we do at Truth, Money, and Freedom. However, they hit more subjects than we do, since we seem to be more on the financial side. They're more on the American cultural side, the Constitution side, and we cover these subjects as well, but maybe not as much as these guys do. But please check out this video. It's called "Is the Federal Reserve Evil?" Link down below in the description section. Okay, now I have not done any videos about George Floyd. We've talked about it a little bit with Aaron Scott last night, but just wanted to touch base with you guys a little bit on this. This is not unexpected. What I mean is the rioting, the murder of George Floyd, or the apparent murder. There's some people saying that George Floyd is still alive, that he was not killed, and I don't know what to say to that. I mean, I guess I just have to believe that he was murdered, and it looked like a snuff film. So it was a very intentional film. This guy, Derek. What's his name? Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin is the police officer that you see right here. He knew he was being recorded, yet he even looked in the camera, just a stone cold stare into the camera, while the life was slipping out of George Floyd. That was a snuff film, and it was meant to bring about race riots. And my heart goes out to George Floyd's family and his friends. Because apparently, right now, as the narrative has been set, the reason why he was killed is because he passed a fake $20 bill at a deli. And that's why he was arrested. They said he was resisting arrest. There is absolutely no evidence of that. There's only the word of the police officers. All the witnesses and bystanders said that was not the case, and then there's even now some video that surfaced showing that was not the case. So this was murder, and it looked personal. So I think there was something between these two men, and once again, they worked at the same nightclub. And I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but what I'm talking about is the aspect as it relates to the economy. And so I know you're probably saying to yourself, "Hey, Patrick, why are you talking about George Floyd and the economy?" Because they have got to get chaos up and running as quickly as possible, because the economy literally is failing quickly, very quickly. And they've got to get narratives, new narratives up and running, and new divides up and running, so that people literally can't tell what's going on. They can't discern. They can't critically think their way into politicians and central banks. So we at Truth, Money, and Freedom knew there was going to be chaos of this nature during the collapse. And in fact, this is just the beginning. So there's more to come. And the riots will probably get worse. We discussed this with Aaron last night. Just so you guys know, there is a secondary video that actually shows that not only was Derek Chauvin, kneeling on the poor guy's neck. There were two other guys behind the vehicle that were also holding him down so he couldn't move. All apparently because he passed a fake $20 bill. That's the current narrative. Because they can't use the narrative that he was resisting arrest anymore. There's too many eyewitnesses and apparently some kind of video showing when he was arrested, and he was not resisting arrest. So this is looking very, very bad for Derek Chauvin and his cohorts there, that they all participated in a murder. Okay. Now, former Minneapolis Police Department Derek Chauvin is in custody, charged with murder in George Floyd's death. They're giving him a third-degree charge. However, the more we look at this and the more we look into this, it's looking like first-degree murder. Manslaughter, I don't think, applies here. This was not a crime of passion. This looked very personal. This looked thought out and intentional. And like I said, you see, look at this guy here, staring right into the camera as he is literally snuffing the life out of that man. There's something very wrong here. And once again, it's not about picking sides. It's just about what the video showed. The video was very clear to me. There is no way to misinterpret it. This is my opinion. This was a murder. So, want to talk about CNN's Van Jones. Once again, he was in the Obama administration and had to leave because it was discovered he was a communist, a card-carrying communist. I'm talking about leaving the Obama administration. He now works for CNN. He says, even the most well-intentioned white person has a virus in his or her brain. Once again, fomenting even more division, saying that even white people who are not racist can become racist very simply and very easily under the right circumstances. And this kind of crap needs to stop. And what I'm talking about is people like Van Jones insisting that racism is basically built into white people's DNA, that they can't get away from it. And this is a very divisive remark. And this is the kind of thing that should have him losing his job at CNN, but of course he won't. So once again, the divisions keep forming and they become stronger and they're becoming cemented. Okay, next story. 2 officers shot, 1 killed in Oakland as George Floyd's fury sweeps U.S. Trump puts Army on notice to deploy in the streets for the first time since 1992 L.A. riots as 19-year-old Detroit protester fatally shot, and Minneapolis erupts for 4th night. Okay, so the riots continue, and by the way, this is Monday morning, and it's about 5 o'clock in the morning. This continues, and some places it's calming down, some places it's getting worse, but I guarantee you, if they can't get some kind of martial law or some kind... And by the way, I come from Minnesota, so I'm very familiar with Minneapolis and the region. I grew up literally 25 miles away from Minneapolis, as a matter of fact. And my folks and my brother, 2 brothers, actually still live up there in that same area. So they've actually got curfews now in the suburbs of Minneapolis. Everyone has to be in by 8, and in fact there's even, I'm not going to show it now, but there was a video of them actually shooting rubber bullets at people who were literally not in their homes by 8 p.m. So this was, I believe it was National Guard in Minnesota, marching down the streets, yelling and shouting and doing all the kinds of things that sociopaths and psychopaths love to do. Next story, Donald Trump gloats about riot at CNN's Atlanta headquarters as he retweets a supporter who said attack was ironic because it was carried out by the very riots they promoted as noble. Once again, more divisions. So the president's very much involved in dividing the people. So, guys, let's just be honest here. And let's talk about this very quickly from a very common sense point of view. The rioters going and destroying private businesses is not a good thing. It really isn't. Now, if they were really truly upset and they were attacking police stations, you'd almost kind of in your mind go, okay, I get it. I understand what they're doing. But when they're burning down auto zones and coffee shops and cigarette shops and liquor stores, this is literally all about creating chaos. And it makes me think George Soros is definitely funding some of this. In fact, there's even a a rumor going around that George Soros gave a wink and a nod to burning down AutoZone stores because he owns shares in them, and he was like, hey, listen, guys, if you want to go ahead and burn down AutoZone stores, we have insurance. Wink, wink. But it's getting that bad. Okay, next story. As the world burns. So we're talking about personal safety, security are quickly becoming very important in this era of growing social rage. That's right. So that way we can call upon the government to come in and help us out. Well, that's not what we need. That's not what we want. And but protesters are attacking private property. So that basically starts curfews and arrests and all kinds of charges being leveled, against people that may or may not be involved in these riots. By the way, I do not condone these riots. And when I said, I kind of agree with burning down of government buildings, I don't really agree, I just understand. Like, for instance, the precinct building in Minneapolis that got burned down. I kind of understand that because that would be directly against the police where Derek Chauvin worked. That I would kind of get, but burning down of private businesses just doesn't make sense anymore at that point. Looting and walking off with stuff from the store, carts full of televisions or groceries or something like that after they've thrown bricks. And by the way, pallets of bricks are being delivered at where they're going to have protests. So someone's paying for all this. So there's something a lot more going on here than meets the eye. However, I will wrap it all up into the social rage and the financial collapse in just a few moments here. Let's see. Update. Security officers gunned down at Oakland Federal Building. They were security officers. They were not police officers. And also, I have not heard of anyone being killed. So it doesn't matter, though. They were literally shooting at security officers. That's exactly what they want. And I think it's really, truly a way for to allow this to ferment until it gets to the point where police officers are being killed. That's what they want. And by they, I'm talking about the New World Order, the powers that be, the Illuminati, take your pick. And that way, they can go ahead and start legislation and get it fast-tracked through the system for gun control. Whether it be gun control or gun confiscation, red flag laws, matters not. It all comes down to the same thing. So let's take a look here real quick at the markets. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. But really what I wanted to show you was gold and silver. Gold and silver are on the way up, and I know this is the paper price, but I'm not going to go through the physical prices at the four main sites that I go to right now, which are higher. But the paper price is on the rise by quite a bit. It's actually doing quite well. So I expect these numbers to be read today. And once again, this is way before the markets open, so these are Friday close prices. But the confidence is being lost in America when you see the chaos erupt. And of course, another reason to blame the markets on going down is because of the quote unquote rioters and the protests and this and that and the other, when it's all fake to begin with. Okay, it's time for me to talk about Trump for a second here. Now Trump is going after censorship, which he promised to do a year and a half ago. And apparently he wasn't interested in going after censorship until he himself was being under the threat of censorship with Twitter. Okay, I have a lot of things I'd like to say about this. And the first thing is, more important than anything else, we do not have a free market president. So I'm calling Trump out on this. If Trump were truly a free market president, he would move from Twitter to some other platform. It just makes sense. There are freer and better platforms out there. In fact, Mastodon is one of them. A quick Google search will, or internet search, I shouldn't say Google search, will actually bring you to the alternatives. And they're quite popular, actually. Mastodon, you got Gab, Amino, and Peaks. These are the four top competitors, and they are freer than Twitter. There's a lot less censorship going on there, and in some of them, no censorship whatsoever. So why isn't it Trump isn't promoting another platform that is freer rather than, literally going after Twitter? It's the same argument I have for people who are upset with Facebook being censored. Why complain about, Facebook? Get off of Facebook. go on to another platform if you want to continue, and go to a freer platform and make it popular. That's what you do in a free market. There are choices, and that's what, choice and competition is all about. If there are no other platforms because, they've been bought up, they've been, bullied, to the point where they're out of business, that's different. Microsoft is one of those, and I know people say, oh, there's Mac and there's Linux. Well, not really, because the software people, basically feel a lot of pressure to continue developing Microsoft software. I don't want to get into a big free market thing today, but I do want to say Trump is not free market, period, end of story. And I know there are people who will be upset with me for saying that, but it's very, very clear to me. He has the bully pulpit. He could literally shift right over to any one of these competitors and put Twitter out of business for censorship. That's what you do in a free market. That's what you do. But there are no free markets, and we talk about that in Truth, Money, and Freedom all the time. I don't want to keep harping on this, but I think it's very important that everyone understand that Trump is not free market, and I'll wrap that up and explain why I'm talking about that in a second. Okay, so Minneapolis mayor says white supremacists, out-of-state investigators behind the protests, but arrests show different story. Once again, new narratives being pushed forth by politicians about what the problems are. And of course, they're literally trying to foment even more divisions between the people, because you can't be blaming politicians and bankers, right? You can't do it. Okay. Final one, which kind of wraps it all up. The question of evidence when governments push political narratives. This is the crux of the matter, and I'm going to end here in just a few moments here, but I want you guys to think about this. Why is it governments can go ahead and make virtually any claim they want without furnishing any evidence, when we in our personal lives have a very difficult time getting away with that? How much influence does someone have over another? Is it true that when an authority figure is constantly pushing a narrative that is false, gets literally their say before anyone else's say? And the answer to all of these questions is yes. The government actually pushes fake news. They actually develop fake news, they push fake news, and they push narratives that actually serve an agenda that usually is part of the 1% agenda. So as we go through all these tabs up here, and by the way, I'll have everything linked down below. As we go through all these tabs here, keep in mind, there is a narrative, there is an agenda, there is something to be served here that will actually benefit the 1%. And believe you me, and the reason why I went and talked about the markets real quick is, once again, I am not a financial advisor. That is not what I do. But I am smart enough to know that these numbers are completely fake. And I mean completely fake. And if I were to literally put my hard-earned cash into these markets, I would deserve what's coming to me, because I have learned enough to know that this is literally 100% false. Now, for those of you who are stuck in this stuff because of 401ks and IRAs, you have options. I don't want to go through them right now. I'm not a financial advisor, but I would strongly consider getting a loan against your 401k or getting out of your IRA or what have you. And getting some silver, gold, or some crypto, getting some storable food, starting gardens, because this whole thing is shaking apart. And if those of you who think that when I've been saying this is shaking apart starting in September, which was nearly a year ago, it turns out so far that's been pretty accurate. Now, it's not happening as fast as a lot of people thought they would, but that's literally to keep confidence up in the stock market. Trump's focus is on the stock market and on the stock market alone. He does not care about anything else, and that's what he wants to be his legacy is. And by the way, that's also how he can say he's a free market guy, is because he promoted the stock market, American corporations, American companies, but he's only pushing the Dow. You don't hear him talking about the NASDAQ, the S&P, the Russell. But the Russell is, of course, small cap or small, corporations. So, gang, just be discerning when you actually hear the news, when you're actually watching things. even, for instance, political stories that are out there, and realize there are narratives being pushed by the federal government that are simply not true. And they're doing it to push up the stock markets, basically. They're doing it to literally serve the 1%. So protect yourself, protect your family, protect your progeny. Think outside of the box on this stuff. Once again, there's a lot of folks like me on YouTube that are saying these kinds of things. But the main important point to take away is you have to take personal responsibility for your financial health, for your savings. And you cannot save money anymore in this, save currency anymore in this environment. That includes Dow. And by the way, if you look at what happened during the Great Depression in the stock market crash of 1929, it took a full 25 years for the stock market to recover from that crash. 25 years. Do you have 25 years to wait to quote-unquote break even on your investments? And that's even before inflation. When you add inflation, it was probably closer to 40 years before people actually broke even from 1929. You guys have to take these things into account. This is something they will never tell you on the financial channels, on Fox News, on CNN, MSNBC, CNN. They will not talk about these things because literally everyone would leave the markets. They would leave the markets. They would probably go into gold and silver. This is why they never, ever, ever bring up the fact that it took about 40 years for people to break even from the crash of 1929. So your discernment is, of course, extremely important. Your perspective on this should be garnered not just from me, but from your own critical thinking, from, listen to all, follow none. That's something Chris Duane used to say all the time. I encourage that kind of behavior with every person that's actually watching this podcast. Guys, first of all, I want to thank all of you. I know I have some new subscribers right now from Aaron's channel, and I want to say hello to all of you. Aaron and I are of like mind when it comes to what's going on in the financial markets. Aaron is not and I shouldn't be speaking for Aaron, but I don't think she's a financial advisor. I am not either. However, for those of you who have money in the stock market, money in bonds, money in money market accounts, and currency, I need to say currency. I need to follow the Mike Maloney thing. Those of you who have savings in these vehicles, please look around. Start reading some stuff, start looking into articles, start understanding inflation, true inflation. I should have brought up shadow stats here for you guys, but please look into that because this thing doesn't look too healthy right now from a technical perspective, and from every other. And we talked about this last night. Even though the federal government and the Federal Reserve can throw money, and by the federal government I mean the Treasury, can throw money into the stock market and keep pushing it up, there's going to come a point where it's against their interests to do so because it's all about fleecing the middle class. Trust me on this. This is what the crash of 1929 was all about. Was about literally disarming the middle class because they were becoming a very big power politically. The middle class needed more representation, and that bothered the 1%. So think about it. It's happening again. The middle class is being fleeced right now, and the last way to take them is to take their retirement. George Carlin said it best. They're coming for your retirement. They're coming for your Social Security. Social Security they will take through inflation. Your retirement in the markets will be taken out through a crash. Okay, gang, I've already spoke too long. I just wanted to get this update out. And remember, the Talk Junkies did a really, really good show with them, and it was about the Federal Reserve and the printing of money and why that is against America's interests. So you guys take a look at that and subscribe to them, and of course Aaron Scott's channel as well. And so at any rate, that's all I have to cover for today. So you guys all have a wonderful day. May God bless each and every one of you.